as we wait for people to join. But today's webinar is about how to hire, train, and retain an ISA. And we're actually going to spend a good bit of time talking about lead generation in the shift. So wrapped up in that, we'll talk about the importance of the ISA position. But I'm going to share with you some of the trends I'm seeing from teams I'm working with. What can you expect right now with lead generation? So it will help me lead this webinar for you guys today, for you to go ahead and type in the chat box, one, what is your role? So are you an ISA? Are you a rainmaker? And then also I would love to know, what is the main reason that you joined this webinar today? So what do you want to get out of today's topic? Because I can pivot and kind of adjust what we're talking about based on what it is that you guys are looking for. By the way, the word pivot, I feel like that word has been used a lot, pivot with the shift. And I'm just curious if it makes any of you guys think of that Friends episode. I admit I'm a Friends fan. I love that show. And do you guys know the scene where they're taking the couch up the chairs and they're yelling pivot? Every time someone says we have to pivot for the shift, that is exactly what I think of. So if you don't know what I'm talking about and you need a laugh break, when this webinar is over, not right now, but when this webinar is over, go check out, just go to YouTube and look up Pivot Friends episode and you'll see what I'm talking about. All right, so go ahead and fill in the chat box with where you're located, what your position is, and then what you most want to get out of today's webinar. While we do that, I'm going to make a really exciting announcement. And this is an announcement I've kept under my hat for quite a while. And I wanted to wait until it was official and it was live. So the most commonly asked question that I get is, Anna, how do I hire an ISA? Where do I find this person? What's reasonable? How do I pay them? How do I know what to expect from them? And how do I train this person? How do I introduce them to my team? Right? So if I have an agent team and I'm bringing an ISA in, how do I integrate that? So I'm so excited. On April 21st, I am launching a class in partnership with MAPS. It's going to be a 5-week webinar class called How to Hire, Train, and Retain ISAs. And I'll show you right now where you can find it. And then we'll jump into today's class. So what you'll do, and by the way, it's not specific only to Keller Williams. So if you're on this call, it is open to anyone. And you can go to mapscoaching.com and you'll come here and you'll click on coaching. And this little drop down will come. And way over here on the right, you will see how to hire, train, and retain inside sales agents. What's really cool is this is the first time I'm actually announcing it publicly other than in the Facebook group. And we already have about a dozen people signed up. So I expect we'll have a really great class. So again, you just go to coaching, how to hire, train, and retain inside sales agents. And you'll see it right here. It's $199. It'll be a webinar video format, much like this. And it'll be 5 weeks, launching on April 21st. So only about 3.5 weeks away. Really excited about that. The other place you can find it, some of you are more familiar with this website, isamapscoaching.com, and you can go to resources. And there is a link right there, how to hire, train, and retain an ISA. So again, that's isamapscoaching.com, resources, and you can find it right here. And I believe our moderator, Hannah, thank you, Hannah, is also putting a link into the chat box for you. So what's different about that class versus what we're doing right now? I'm going to give you the best that I can in the next 25 to 30 minutes. That is definitely not enough information to help you build out your entire team with all the things to consider. So that class was designed over 5 weeks. We're going to do a deep dive. What qualities are you looking for? Where do you find talent? What should you expect from this person? I think right now, especially with the shift occurring, we're really seeing the importance of having a talented person in the ISA position. Really, I think of ISA as a rainmaker, because when you have a talented inside sales agent, they will make it rain, right? They will cause leads to come in, they'll set appointments, and they'll help the business move forward. So I think right now, as we're in the market shift, a lot of people, even more than normal, have been asking me, how do I find a talented ISA and what can I expect from them? So I'm going to hit a lot of that today on today's webinar, and that class will take it a lot deeper. So again, April 21st, and I'll mention it again at the end. So let me read the questions here in the box. Looks like a lot of us are agents today, which is great. And I'm looking for questions. Okay, so I see sales manager, rainmaker. It looks like a lot of you guys are rainmakers. Is this really a shift or a lockdown? It's a great question. I'll address that today as well. All right, perfect. And you're looking for how to pay an ISA. So it looks like a lot of this is similar to what I was already planning to cover. Okay, so let's start with this. Let's talk about what are some things that I've seen through the people I'm coaching with. I want to pass it off to you so you guys can prepare yourselves for the shift. So everybody write this down. What I'm noticing, and this isn't a Keller Williams study, this isn't something I saw somewhere. This is me gathering data from people that I'm coaching and diving deep with them every week and looking at the numbers. And what I've seen is contact to set ratio. So what I mean by that is if it takes you 10 contacts to set one appointment, that's a 1 out of 10 ratio, right? What I'm finding right now across the board with everyone I'm coaching is an average of 2.4 times the amount of contacts to set the same amount of appointments they did 4 or 5 weeks ago. So if it used to take you 10 contacts to set an appointment, it's very reasonable right now to expect it would take you 24 contacts to set an appointment. I mention this because we're in a pandemic, right? We have the coronavirus going on. This is not a normal scenario. And even with that, I've noticed people I've coached saying, man, have I just lost my skill? My confidence is going down. I'm not setting appointments like I once was. And I just want to encourage you, you may actually be better than you've ever been before. Your skill may have increased. And because we are in a lockdown in many places around the country, it is a normal expectation that it will take you about 2.5 times the amount of contacts to set an appointment as it did a few weeks ago. So just watch that you're not getting in your head about it. It's normal. I will tell you, something that I've been encouraged by is that we work in an industry where on some level I can control my job security, right? Because what that's saying, guys, is if you want to set the same amount of appointments you were a few weeks ago, take your contacts and go 2.5 times whatever those were, and you'll still set the same amount of appointments. We're not, thankfully, in an industry like a lot of people are, where there's just layoffs or, the restaurant industry where the doors are actually closed. We can, even from home, have a lot of control over the business right now. And so I think that's a huge blessing. So I'd love actually to even hear from you guys. What have you seen from your contact to set ratio? How has that changed over recent weeks? And I'll include that data in my research as well. But figure about 2.5 times the amount of contacts to set the same amount of appointments. So then the next question for some people is, how do I do that, right? Maybe some of you are at home with the kids. Maybe you already were absolutely maxed and you're not sure, how could I get double the amount of contacts that I was 5 weeks ago? So actually, I would love to hear from you guys. Type into the chat box, what are some ideas that you could use to up your contacts? And I'll share my ideas and then we'll read out the chat box. Then we'll get into the specifics of hiring an ISA and how does that work. So as far as how to help increase your contacts, I want you to write this down. Phone calls are always supreme. So we want to highly do that through phone calls. We want the majority of our contacts to be through phone calls. However, I was just working with an agent. She now has 2 children at home and she's schooling them, right? She also is working full-time as an agent and she has contracts that she's managing. So for her, we figured out that she needed to have 30 contacts a day by phone. And then we set a goal for her to have an additional 100 contacts through social media. So whether that be a social media post with 100 likes, 100 comments, but her max that she could hit during the day right now, between schooling the kids, all the other duties that come with being an agent, we set it at 30. And that was with her being very efficient. And then the rest will come through social media. So perhaps you do a Facebook Live and encourage people to comment. That will help get a contact. So think, how can 2.4 times the amount of people know that you're in real estate? Okay, that's kind of like the big overall question. The other thing that you could do is texting. If you are not already, join the group, ISA Mastermind group. And just yesterday, I think it was, I posted a document on some texting shortcuts. So you can check that out. It's got a lot of little tips of how you can make templates. Okay, I'm just reading the box here real quick. Yeah, have a quiet time for the kids. We're having to get really creative, aren't we? Okay, I see a lot of questions about buyer and seller appointments. So we'll address that in a minute if we have time. I will tell you, last webinar that I did was how to leverage technology with what's going on right now. So if you actually go, and I'll show you actually, for the questions about how to do virtual showings and set virtual appointments, if you go to isamapscoaching.com and you click on webinars, the last webinar that was posted is on that topic. And it's right here, Fortify Your Business During Quarantine. This webinar addresses how do you use technology, how do you help your show ratio stay high, what can you do to make sure you're still having appointments right now during this quarantine. So check out that webinar. And if at the end we have extra time, I'll answer any other questions that you guys have. So what do the calls sound like? I see that in the chat box as well. What we want to understand from a basic human psychology standpoint is a basic human need is to know that I can survive, that I can survive. Only after I know that I can survive can I have a thriving type conversation with you. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is we want to start our calls with just checking on how people are doing. So a conversation right now would sound a lot like, hey, Hannah, this is Anna from the Haro Group. Hey, I'm actually not calling you about real estate today. I'm calling simply to see how you're doing. And then there's some follow-up conversations that you can have. Things like, tell me about the family. How are you doing with having your needs met right now? Because if you try to start talking to someone about real estate and they're sitting at their house wondering, where am I going to find toilet paper? Or am I going to be able to feed my children tonight? They're not going to be able to engage in a real estate conversation with you until they know that that need is met. So make sure you meet the need first. Make sure that they are okay. Provide resources for them or tell them where they can go to get the resources they need. Then their mind will be more free to then have a real estate conversation with you. So I actually got a good bit into what that conversation sounds like, again, on this last webinar. So again, isamapscoaching.com, go to the webinar tab, and then watch the one, Fortify Your Business During Quarantine. It'll probably slide down to this spot once we post the most recent webinar, which is this one. So, but you can find it there under the webinar tab. In that webinar, I went over what does your conversation sound like right now? What is the actual guide? There's a shift conversation guide that I provided through that. All of that's available through that webinar. Okay, we had a question, where are the texting shortcuts? So I have a Facebook group called ISA Mastermind Group. And if you go under files, it should be the most recent file that was uploaded. I just put it in there. And Hannah put our link, I could think of the word. Hannah put the link there in the chat box for you. So you can check it out there. And under the files section is the shift conversation guide as well as the texting shortcuts. So ISA Mastermind Group is your spot for that. So through all this, I want to get to what we said the call was for today, which is how do you bring lead generation back in-house and how do you make your business stronger through having a talented ISA? Clearly, we can tell if we need to increase our contacts by 2.4 at a minimum, and we need to make sure that we're checking with the community. How are you doing? Are your needs met? It is a good, highly likely chance that you need more hands on deck to help make that happen. So that's where an ISA can come in hand for you. So let's talk about, where do you find talent? What does talent look like for the role? I'll touch real quickly on compensation, and then yes, what other results you can expect. I made a little list of things. All right, so first of all, where do you find talent? I coach a lot of teams that have a lot of ISAs. The largest team I coach has 18 ISAs on it. The next one has about 12. So there's a lot of teams I'm familiar with that have a lot of ISAs, and it's running very successfully for them. And I've asked them, where did you find your talent? And the overwhelming majority is Sphere, past clients, and vendors. So the idea is you're reaching out to people that already know you. They know what kind of business you run, and they're going to understand how you operate. Therefore, they will know what kind of people may be attracted to work with you. So Sphere, I found a lot of talent leads by calling someone I go to church with. Now, I knew that she would not be interested. She's a stay-at-home mom. She really wants to be a stay-at-home mom, but she was a huge fan of the Haro Group. She also had the personality of the type of person I would look for. So instead of not calling her, knowing she wasn't looking for a job, I called her and I said, hey, Allie, you have the personality of the person I want to hire. I know you're not looking, but who do you know that's a lot like you? And the traits I described were they're really good with people. They tend to be very connected. So they might be the person that knows everybody, or they frequently connect people together. Maybe they strike up a conversation easily with people at the grocery store line. That's the kind of person I'm looking for. Strong work ethic, grit. They keep going even if they don't see results yet. So who do you know that has the ability to keep going despite adversity? And she actually provided several leads to me that turned out to be really solid leads. So that's what I mean when I say your sphere could be past clients or vendors. So the lawyers that you work with, title companies, they may know someone that would be an excellent fit for your team. Now, if you're going to do an online ad, I have heard that Indeed.com is a great place. In fact, I know of two really talented individuals that came from Indeed.com. The thing that you want to know is you're going to need to go through a much larger pool of people to find that one excellent person. So I compare it kind of like if I'm calling FSBO or expireds, I can expect that about 10 contacts will lead me to one really good appointment. Now, if I'm calling circle calling, I know that it will take me about 100 contacts to find one really good appointment. So it's that same idea. If I call my sphere or past clients, I can probably find a really good lead for talent out of about 10 people. But if I'm posting an online ad, it might take me 100 resumes to find that one really good person. So you can find talent in both places. Just know that the effort and the amount of time it will take you to go through all that will take a bit longer if you're doing online, but you certainly can find people that way. All right, reading here. Oh yeah, restaurants can be a great place. Several of you typed that in. Yeah, servers, people that are used to customer service, excellent. It's a great place to find talent. Okay, so what are some of the traits? I already mentioned some of them, but I'll reiterate them, and I'm going to highlight one specifically right now that I believe is massively important. It's always been important, but right now it is massively important. So the first thing I'm going to mention to you is that they're good with people. So when I'm interviewing an ISA, I like to call them or have them call me, whatever, but get on the phone and see how quickly do they feel like a friend. And I know that might sound a little bit like a Hallmark movie, right? They feel like a friend. But if you think about it, you're hiring this person to call the community on your behalf. And how quickly do they put people at ease over the phone? It's a really good question. So if you're interviewing them and it's 5 minutes in, 10 minutes into the phone call, it still feels kind of rigid, not making a strong personal connection, that would be a red flag. So we're looking for people that very quickly can put people at ease. Okay, so that's one. Another one would be making sure that they align with your core values. Now that might be different depending on your team, but I've seen a lot of times where you'll make a hire. I did this, made a hire where I felt like they were excellent. They would do a great job in the role. They actually were a decent performer, but they were not meshing with the team. There was a big disconnect. Well, especially when you have someone that is setting appointments for agents, it's really important that we have a good relationship and they fit the culture. So that's going to look different for each one of you, yet make sure they're a good culture fit. The other thing, and this is the one that I said is massive right now, is absolutely they need to have grit. And here's why. I've coached long enough. I've coached 8 years when you put it all together. And I can't tell you how many times I've been working with people and they're getting really close to that 3-month mark where things will really start flowing for them and they just give up. And they don't see it through. And I know from looking at them, they could be an outstanding ISA and have a fantastic career. But because they're not having the grit factor, they give up right before things really explode for them. And so I really want you to think through, how could you identify if someone has grit? So perhaps ask them, tell me about a challenge that you overcame in your life and how did you do it? Maybe not that you have to do this, I've never run a marathon, but maybe you can look at what are some of their sports background, right? Like, have they run a marathon before? Well, that takes a lot of grit. That takes a lot of positive head space, right? So I would ask them, tell me about some things that you've overcome. What are some adversity situations that you've overcome, maybe some accomplishments, and how did you do that? What was your thought process? And what you're looking for is someone that has the ability to keep going when everything else is telling them to stop. The reason I say that's especially important right now is a lot of the contacts that we're making right now will pay off in 3 months. That's normal. Right now, it might pay off in 3 to 6 months because of what we're going through with the coronavirus. So we're hearing a lot of people saying, I'm going to wait. And what we know when we look at history, and I've asked a lot of teams that have gone through this. I've asked people that have gone through the last shift. This is what Gary Keller described. I've called teams that had natural disasters in their towns, like hurricanes and tornadoes, and said, hey, what did you do when everything stopped overnight? Your market just shut down overnight. What did you do, and what were the results because of that activity? And without exception, every team has told me we stayed in the right activities. We increased our contacts and we stayed in the right activities. And what they described is they had an immediate dip. Quarter two, guys, we're going to have a dip. I've heard predictions of an 18 to 24% dip in quarter two. Will that actually be the case? I don't know. We'll find out. But that's what a lot of the experts are predicting. However, quarter three and quarter four, again, predictions. We don't know for certain, but all the predictions that I've seen, without exception, say that quarter three and quarter four will be very strong. It's just right now while we are in quarantine. So that's an example of why I say you need someone with grit. You need someone that's okay with doing all this activity and not necessarily seeing payoff for 3 to 6 months. That's the type of person you're looking for any time of the year, but especially right now with what we're going through. So I see a question about, do you see success with a licensed ISA? I personally would say yes. Now, I was an unlicensed ISA my first year. And so certainly, and I had 86 closings my first year with 2 agents, and I was unlicensed. So you absolutely can have success unlicensed. What I will say is I have found through coaching, and myself included, that when I was licensed, I could now earn commission, which made my earning potential higher. It also made me much more motivated to see the person get to closing. So when I was on a salary with a bonus structure, I still had a work ethic and I still worked hard. I mentioned I had 86 closings. I still was putting in the work, but I found that something changed in my brain once I was licensed, and I knew that I could get a commission check. I got a lot more strategic. I became a lot more invested in, will this person actually make it to closing? I also thought, how can I up our price point? Because instead of getting the same pay kind of no matter what happened, my brain got more excited about those higher price point homes, thinking same amount of work, bigger paycheck. And you don't have that if you are unlicensed. So you can have success both ways. Make sure you check with your state on what's allowed if they are unlicensed. A lot of states have regulations. And so just check with your local broker or your local association of realtors. But yes, I would say that licensed tends to be a lot better. All right, so talented ISAs, just described it. I see a question, how about an individual agent that's doing lead generation? If you're talking about qualities, yes, it's the same qualities. Pretty much every role that's a lead generation facing role, you have to have some sort of grit, because what you do today will pay off typically in 3 to 6 months. So you have to make sure you have grit. By the way, I'm going to take a little rabbit trail for a quick second. I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, from what I'm seeing, we're needing to take our contacts times 2.4 to get the same amount of appointments we did 5 weeks ago. So again, 10 contacts to set an appointment 5 weeks ago is now today 24 contacts to set an appointment. Quick thing, you may not have experienced that yet in your market. And I want to caution you that it may be an illusion right now. And what I mean by that, I think most of us probably know that either right before the sun comes up in the morning, or right before the sun, or right after the sun has gone down at night, that's when most accidents occur. And it's that weird time where it's not dark, but it's not bright. And that's when we have a lot of accidents, because it can create some tricks with the way our eyes see things. Our depth perception can be off. And I think right now we're kind of in like the twilight area of lead gen, because what's happening right now, you may say, well, you know what? I'm still talking to 10 people and I'm still setting 1 appointment. So that might not apply to me yet. Realize that that's a bit of an illusion, because the appointments you're setting today are from the work that you've done December, February, and March, even tapping a little bit back January, December, March, even really the last 3 to 4 months. So today, no matter what's happening, maybe you haven't seen a big difference yet. I'm going to ask all of you to take your contacts and multiply them by at least 2.4, if not more, so that 3 months from now, you are still on pace to set your appointments. So that's why I say it could be a bit of an illusion. You may not be hitting your contacts needed for 3 months from now, and today still feel good. So make sure that you increase those as well. All right, what about training tools and what kind of results to expect? So as far as training in ISA, we definitely want to incorporate script practice. And I'm talking really fast, guys. This is part of why we're going to have a class come out, but I'll give you like the quick snapshot. With script practice, the biggest thing I hear from ISAs is, oh man, my Rainmaker gave me like 20 scripts and I'm totally overwhelmed. I don't even know where to begin. That's a very, very common thing that I hear. What I have found is much better success in giving them one script at a time. And it also motivates them to master it, because it's, here's your first script. When you can demonstrate this without the script in front of you. So when you can role play with me, you don't need to be looking at the script constantly. That will tell me that you are ready for the next script. So it's you give them one at a time, and it's almost like a test out process. Also, with scripting, the best script habit is to take a small chunk. So think back, maybe you played in a play when you were in high school or elementary school. It's not reasonable to think that you'll read the whole entire script, maybe 2 pages worth, and just get that in your brain by reading the whole thing over and over and over. If you think back, you probably took it and you chunked it down. So maybe it was 2 pages and you said, let me start with the first paragraph, memorize that first paragraph, and then I'll move on to the next one. That's exactly what we want to do with script practice. So whether it's for yourself or whether you have a new ISA, you want to actually start with just straight up memorizing the information. You don't even have to role play with someone else. Write it out 12 times, read it aloud, and go paragraph by paragraph until you have that script memorized. Once you have it memorized, then you can start role playing with someone else. And when you first start role playing, keep it easy. We don't send our kids out to learn how to ride a bike and say, hey, let's go mountain biking with no training wheels. Good luck, right? Yet that's what we do a lot of times with scripting. And so what you want to do is give them one script at a time. When you start role playing, be the ideal client. So yes to everything, that sounds great. Once they really have the flow of the script down, now you start adding in more objections and things like that. Okay, as far as results, get ready to write this down. I'm going to tell you what are typical results. What I'm about to tell you is pre-pandemic, okay? So it will look different right now. Yeah, I'm going to teach this webinar for the majority of time because this webinar will be available for quite a while and you may be watching this 6 months from now. So here's what we normally track. We track dial to contact, and our goal for that should be 12%. All that means is out of everyone I'm calling on this list, 12% picked up. If it's less than that, I just may not have a great list, or it might be a bad time of day. So it's not an indication of skill, it's more an indication of strategy. So am I calling a good list at a good time of day? 12% or more pick up? Great. All right, contact to set. This is across all lead sources, expired, FSBO, circle calling, sign calls. It's kind of all mixed together. You can reasonably expect a 5% contact to set ratio. I will say right now, I'm seeing that drop to more like 2 to 2.5%, just while we're dealing with coronavirus, okay? But normally, on a normal day, it's 5% contact to set. And then set to held, our target is 70%. So if I set an appointment for you, 70% of those should show up, and I'm doing a pretty good job. So those are the main things that we want to be tracking. All right, so I want to share with you guys one more time before we go. I see a lot of questions in the chat box. And guys, all those questions are exactly why we created a class. This is why we have created a 5-week class. I've done several webinars on how to hire, train, and retain an ISA, and it never feels like enough. And that is the most common question that I get. So whether you are currently ready to hire an ISA, or it's something you think, I know I'm going to want to eventually, maybe not just yet, but I know I want to at some point, this class is for you. So I'm going to show you again how to take this class. There is a 5-week class coming out, and you go to isamapscoaching.com, and it will bring you to this page, and you go to resources. And under the resources tab, it's moving really slow. Under the resources tab, you will see a drop down for how to hire, train, and retain ISAs, and it will bring you to this page. It's $199, 5 weeks, and it starts April 21st, so just about 3 weeks away. I'm so excited. Guys, I have seen a lot of people fail with ISAs, and that's part of where the passion came from to launch this class. Is I want to help people get it right. I want to help people get this right. When you have a talented ISA, it can absolutely change the trajectory of your business. You will have more appointments, which will lead to more closings, which will provide more profit, which, hey, more profit, great. And maybe that means that you can go hire more people. And I've seen a lot of people get it wrong, and my goal is to help you get it right. So it's a 5-week class. A quick rundown is we're going to talk through how do you know it's time to hire an ISA? So that's actually week 1. How do I know it's time to hire someone? What's a good ratio, ISA to agent count? How do I pay them? Where do I find them? What are some reasonable expectations? How do I integrate them into the culture, right? I have personally experienced as an ISA and then coaching ISAs, a lot of do's and don'ts when it comes to culture. Everything else can be right, but if the agent and ISA are not having a strong culture type relationship, it can actually cause the ISA to leave or create a lot of friction. So there's a lot in there dedicated to how do you keep them motivated and how do you help them integrate into the team in a healthy way. So all the questions in the chat box that I know I haven't been able to get to, that's exactly why we have the class. So again, check it out. And I'm really excited to do that with you. 5 weeks, we can go really deep into it. And you're going to go back again to isamapscoaching.com and look at this right here. There's a little thing that pops up. I think it's called a light box. And it says sign up now, class start April 21st. And it'll bring you right here to this page, $199 for 5 weeks. So that's going to enable us to go a lot deeper than we can on these 30-minute webinars and get you the information you need. I've created the content. Keller Williams is refining it and looking at it so that by the time we deliver this, it is going to be a refined product with all the best information about how to hire an ISA. So again, whether you're looking to do it now, whether it's something you've thought of in the future, hey, we're all home. It's a great time to invest in yourself and increase your knowledge. Okay, real quick, I am also doing a webinar tomorrow, and I will post the information for that in the ISA Mastermind Group Facebook page. It will be very similar to this one. MAPS is actually going to run that for us. I personally am running this one today. After I set this up, they said, hey, we want to do one too. So if you want to hear this again, and there may be some slight variations tomorrow, depending on the questions that come in, I will be doing this again tomorrow. And the link to register for that is in the chat box. So tomorrow afternoon, similar content, maybe slightly different, and you're certainly welcome to join. All right. Oh, awesome. Sounds like some of you guys have signed up. All right, I'll take one more question and then we'll go. So what are my thoughts on college internship? I also saw a question about virtual ISA versus local ISA. Here's the thing, and I'm just going to leave you with this. And I'm not so much going to answer it as I'm going to give you a question to think about. You're hiring someone. In fact, if you read the Shift book, I have to be really careful to pronounce that correctly, the Shift book, or the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, which I think is in my living room right now. Gary Keller says over and over and over that lead generation is the lifeblood of your business. So I just want you to ask yourself, would you want to hire a college intern, virtual assistant? And there's no right or wrong answer to this. I just want you to think of how would you structure that so it's successful. But is that someone that you want to hire for what Gary says is the lifeblood of the business? And here's the thing, guys, especially as we're in a shift, it's really made me super aware of how vital this role is. Every role on the team is important, but I think we can all agree that if we don't have leads, if we don't have appointments, if we don't have closings, all the other roles go away, right? We don't have operations anymore if we don't have things to operate. We have to have solid lead generators. So I think if you were to have a college intern, my question simply would be, is this someone that would likely join the team after, and maybe they're just getting a running start? Is this someone that will only be around for a month or two, or maybe 3 months? If it's short-term or virtual, typically circle calling is best for them, and I would recommend all other leads bring in-house. So I find virtual ISAs, people that are very short-term, have them do kind of like your lowest risk calling, which would be the circle calling. And my strong opinion is the rest of it should be in-house. And again, we're low on time, so that's the kind of stuff we'll talk about a lot deeper in the program. we actually have a whole section of that class dedicated to, do we do virtual? Do we do in-house? Do we do a junior agent model? Do we do an ISA model? All of this is in that 5-week class. All right, guys, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for hanging out. And listen, I hope all of you are doing well. Make sure that you take care of yourself and take time to laugh. I think that's really important right now. And I'll share with you something I heard on a podcast today that has nothing to do with real estate, and then I'm going to let you guys go. But I was listening to someone who has a degree in neuroscience, and they were saying that what you listen to or read about the 45 minutes before you go to bed is running through your mind the whole night. You might not be aware of it. You might not dream about that content. However, your subconscious is. So you might not even know it, but subconsciously you are rehearsing whatever you read or looked at the last 45 minutes before you went to bed. They also said the first 30 minutes in the morning, your brain, again, it will form your subconscious. So when I heard that, I decided I had already taken the news app off of my phone. That was already taken care of. But it made me even think about things like Facebook and Twitter. Right now, those things have a lot of news on them. And I realized for my own mindset, I need to make sure that the last 45 minutes before I go to bed and the first 30 minutes in the morning are protected. I can look at positive things to set my mindset straight, maybe read some scripture, read a book that I love, spend time with the kids, but make sure that you're protecting that time, because we want to make sure that we keep you in a healthy mindset. That's really important, not only for your physical health, but also for how you interact with the world. Definitely still check the news, not against the news, but just protect the last 45 minutes before bed and the first 30 minutes in the morning. All right, guys, I appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Have a great night.